Hi everyone, Lisa Gifford here, and welcome today to our online class. So we will be doing the Hummingbird panel border class. So we did have a kit that's available, but this is a project that I want you to be able to use in any kind of a panel, particularly any panel that is 24 by width of fabric. So this is what we're going to be working on today, and we're going to be trying to get all the way through this entire project in the next 2 days. So we're going to be working on this for about 2.5 hours today and then again tomorrow. So as far as I want to get through everything today, we're at least going to get the panel trimmed down. We're going to have border 1 applied, and we're going to work on our first ribbon block, the ribbon border, and that is done with our quarter square triangles. So if you see this one here, I'm going to flip it around so that it can be seen a little bit better in the right orientation. This is the panel. Here's our first border. Here is our ribbon border made with quarter square triangles. Another border, plain border, and then I'm going to be showing you how to make the hourglass blocks with the Martelli templates, and we'll be working probably on that tomorrow. So this is the panel, and this is done. If you would have got the kit that we had, it came with the white background fabric. I'm going to walk over here to our ironing station because I do have hanging up. If you wanted to change out your white to a black, if you had this panel, how striking is that? This really makes the project pop. And there's just so many panels out there, so you'd be able to figure out which fabric would work really good with what you're doing. Just the main thing to focus on is getting this panel down so everything works out correctly around here. And when we trim down this panel, I'm going to show you to save the little butterflies that we're going to be cutting off, because here I was able to incorporate them into this project. Kind of makes it look like they're coming out of the project. So the main thing we're going to be working on today is getting this all trimmed down. And once you learn this technique, like I said, any panel that you have that's like a 24 inches by width of fabric, a big focal panel like this, this kind of a border just makes it and frames it in. You could do this on the outside, having the hourglasses, or you could do whatever you want to go around it. But just to do just this part right here really makes any panel, kind of just frames it in, kind of makes it pop. So I'm going to come back over here. So if you got the kit to do this, you would have got the panel, and you would have received the white fabric, which is the background fabric. You would have received the orange and the yellow, and you would have seen the purple and the teal. So here's a panel that you would have got. You would have got a ½ yard of your orange and your yellow. So to make this project, what we're doing, you're going to need a ½ yard of orange and a ½ yard of yellow, 1 1/4 yards of white, and then you're going to need a yard of the teal and a yard of the purple. So that's what you need to complete the entire project top. Then you're going to need additional fabric for the backing, and of course, and then for the binding. I'm trying to remember what the actual final dimensions are. I guess, all right, the finished size of this project is 45 by 60. So that just kind of gives you an idea of how big it's going to be when you're completed. So the first thing, when we had taught this for the retreat, we actually had a prep video. So we don't have a prep video with this one, so we're going to go over everything that we need to do to get ready to start this project. So I'm going to keep my little pattern out. You also would have gotten templates. In here, you're going to have several. They're not marked. These are just the templates that came with this kit. I have the 5-inch half square triangle set, the 6-inch half square triangle, the Martelli 6-inch. We have the 3-inch, have a place for that. We have a 3.5-inch square. And then we have these 2 triangles that are used for making the hourglass. So these are all part of the kit. So if you have the Martelli marking pencil or the metallic pen, I would go ahead and mark these. The ones that we're going to be using for today is going to be the 2 triangles here. This is to make this hourglass, or excuse me, the ribbon. And you're going to need the 3-1/2 inch square and the number 3 half square triangle. These are the templates that we will be using today. The 5 and the 6, we'll be using those tomorrow. So I'm going to set this aside. What other rulers will be good? Well, a jelly roll ruler is a great ruler. If you don't have that, a 2.5-inch strip ruler will be a template or ruler that you'll use a lot of. I think I also use a 1.5-inch strip ruler, a 3-inch strip ruler. So those are some of the rulers that I actually use in making this project. So the first thing that you need to do is prepare your fabrics. By preparing your fabrics, I mean iron them completely and get them all nice and flat. But being careful so that you do not distort your fabrics. So when you pull out your panel, it's going to have some wrinkles in it, some creases in it. So I need for you to iron this. So when you take this to your ironing station, I would first hit it with a dry iron, get as much as I can with the dry iron. If I need to do some starching or getting some moisture on it, then I would mainly focus on these main creases right here. I wouldn't just soak it all down because I'm trying to get all these wrinkles out without distorting it. It should come with you when you get this panel. Typically all of these panels are typically 24 inches. Right at the 24 inches. So you need to take the time to prepare all of your fabrics. But today, get your white completely ironed, your yellow fabric, your orange fabric, and if you have like a little rack or something that you could kind of drape them on as you iron them so that they will not get any more creases in it. I actually have this old quilt rack that I use to drape everything on and keeps everything nice and smooth for me as I move on to the next step. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to focus on getting the panel ready. So I'm going to set this one aside and I'm going to pull out the panel that I had just ironed it out and have all of my creases and all of my wrinkles out, and it's nice, flat and smooth. Now the first thing we got to do is we got to trim it from the top and the bottom, because I need to get this panel to measure. And if you have the pattern, you're going to go to page 22 in the book. You're needing to trim the panel to 23.5 inches by 35.5 inches. That is our first measurement for the panel, because the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put our white border around it. So 23.5 by 35.5. So the first thing that I do is I am going to get this lined up, and I think what we do is I'm going to go ahead and pull it in half, and we're going to go ahead and get our width done. So if I take it and I fold it in half and line up my selvages on the top, get it as even as I can get it, we're going to go ahead and get it to that 23.5 inches. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to slide it over, and I'm going to take this fold right here and I'm going to have it lining on a line here where I've kind of folded it just a little bit, didn't put a heavy crease onto it. And I have it smoothed out, and I have it where it's just slightly over my 0 line, coming over here where it's almost to the 24. So I'm going to trim it here and I'm going to trim it here so I can get it right at my 23.5. Making sure that this is even here on this line here. So this is my first step in trimming it. I go ahead and get my width done. Reason being so that when I turn it onto my long ways onto my mat, then I can start focusing on getting the other trips cuts, because now I will be able to see my numbers on both sides. So I'm going to go ahead and trim off a little bit here. Now you want to pay attention. If you find a little butterfly that's really close to the edge and you kind of want to keep more of him, actually we're going to be trimming that off. I kind of looking to see, making sure I'm not cutting off anything. This butterfly right here, I don't want him being trimmed off too much on the bottom. So I'm going to trim off more on this side than I am over here on the other side. Go ahead and get this at the 23.5. Keeping everything smoothed out. Haven't even cut off the selvages yet. They're still on there. I'm just trimming off the sides. Now this is not the painful part. The painful part is the next part. Now I'm going to go ahead and just flip it around. And I'm going to line up my cut edge right here on my 0 line. That way you can see me cut again at the 23.5. I have it lined up on the 0. And now I'm going to go ahead and trim this little sliver off right here at the 23.5. Just a minimal amount. If you have any questions, feel free to post them. With me today, I have Miss Cindy, and she is being my moderator today, and I also have Margot with me, so she's going to be my little helper and anything that we need to have done. So feel free to ask questions. I'll be glad to answer them. If I don't know the answer, Cindy will know the answer, right, Cindy? Yeah. All right, so I got this at the 23.5 inches. Now we're going to go ahead and cut off our top and bottom. So we're going to open it back up. The first part we're going to cut off is the top part. On this panel, I have these little butterflies. There's 4. So I'm kind of lining this up. So I am going to be cutting just below this butterfly right here. That's typically, I want to say it's like 8 inches, it's 7 or 8 inches from the top that you're trimming off. But how I figured it for here is I want to use these butterflies later on. And I need to cut off about 6 to 7, 8 inches off the top, and then we're going to be cutting a little bit off the bottom. So what I have done, because I took the time and trimmed the width, now I can evenly lay this on my mat, looking to see that it's centered between these lines pretty well, and I can see my markings on each side. And I can see just to this little butterfly right here, there's this little piece right here that I'm going to be setting my ruler just underneath that. So on my mat, I am at that 28-inch mark right here. And I'm going to lay my ruler here. And I can almost see right through it. So I'm going to line it up on the 28 here and here. And I'm going to cut off this section right here. And I'm going to save this little butterfly because we're going to put some fusible underneath these, and then we will be able to cut these out and applique them down. So if I'm looking at this, we are basically cutting off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right about 7 inches of the very top of the panel. Making sure everything is even before, because this is a project you want to measure twice before you cut. Just check, 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 make sure everything is laid out the way you want it. All right, going to cut this first strip off. I got a little nip in my blade. Might need to get a different cutter here. And I'm not throwing this away. I'm going to set it aside. Now I'm going to go ahead and flip this around. Now we got to get this to 35.5. So I'm lining up my cut edge on my 0 line. Smoothing everything out. On the 0 line. And now we're going to go down to the 35.5. Making sure it's even here and here, here and here. And we're just cutting a little bit. Looks like about a 1/2 inch it's coming off the bottom on this end. All right, once you have it measuring 35.5 by 23.5, we're going to go ahead and take it and set it aside. So I'm going to set it on my little quilt rack here. Now I'm going to get my white fabric out. Now we're going to cut our pieces. We need 4 2.5-inch strips. So you should have your fabric all laid out, smoothed and ironed. We need 4 2.5-inch strips. This is what's going to go on the top and on the bottom and on both sides. So what we do is we go ahead and sew our sides on, and then we sew our top and bottom. So this is your first border. So you're going to sew this. I'm going to make sure I got it correct. So you're going to sew the sides first, and then you're going to sew your top and bottom. So you can use your, if you have a jelly roll ruler or a 2.5-inch strip ruler. I do have the jelly roll ruler here, and I can quickly cut out my 4 strips right here.
Lisa,
Yep.
we have a question. Somebody wants to know what the 0 line is.
It's the one that's at the edge of the one. That's the cutting line. The first cut line. That's not the 1 inch, but it's the
beginning.
Yeah, the very beginning line on my mat. It's this one right here. Doesn't have a 0 there, but that's my 0 line right here. And that's my 1.
Okay.
Got that? All right.
Okay.
Now this is probably a project that would be good just to watch me do this all the way through. We're not going to get completely done. I don't know if time's going to allow me to get completely all the way done with making all of the quarter square triangles today. But we'll get to where we should have at least getting them where all sewed together and at least start putting them onto the actual panel. So then after we end the show today, it'll give you plenty of time if you're sewing along with me to catch up, because tomorrow I'm hoping to start the day with our next border and then start making our hourglass blocks. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and get our strips cut, and I need to have 4 2.5-inch strips. And I'm using the jelly roll ruler, which gives me, I can just cut back and forth, 2.5-inch strips. And one more. And here's my piece right here. All right, so you're going to take your panel and you're going to attach it to each side. So with a little bit of a hint, if you want, you can easily take the time and pin all these on. Find your centers, pin it down. What I do is I just lay it on here, stitch all the way down, then I do the other side, I trim it, and then I do my top and bottom, and then I trim it. I make sure that I am not pulling or tugging, let the machine just feed it through. and you should be good to go. So let's go get these 4 pieces done. Once we get this piece done, then we're going to be able to start working on making the hourglass blocks, because they're going to just taking, not an hourglass, but the quarter square blocks to make our ribbon. Now I am sitting on a Janome M7, and I have it set on the 1/4 inch setting that we have on here. So my stitch length is at a 1.8, and everything we're doing is going to be 1/4 inch sewing on here. You can take the time and you can clip and pin this if you want. But once you get it sewn on, I'm going to iron, and then we'll go to the next step. I like to sew. Once I get both the sides done, then I'm going to take it to the iron, we're going to press it, and then we're going to get and trim it, and then we'll get our top and bottoms on. And get it back on my 1/4 inch setting. And just laying my fabric on here, holding it in place, and then sew into my fingers, and just letting the machine do the work. Holding it and then guiding it through. When I get to the end, I kind of just do a little, tiny little back tack just to kind of secure it there. But you're going to cover it up with the net stitch. Now I'm just going to flip it around. Grab your second strip. And like I did with the first one, I'm just kind of laying it on here, getting it past the selvage here. And we're just going to stitch this down right here. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get these pressed back. Now this is your preference. I prefer to press towards the panel. I'm not pressing away. I don't want my seam to be seen, but it's up to you. I kind of like to have it where the panel, the fabric is being pushed, the seam is being pushed towards the panel, so it's kind of hidden under here. So I'm kind of like giving a little bit of a finger press, or bringing it to me this way, flipping it to what would be like the dark side, and pushing this under here. So I'm not seeing my seam through the light fabric. If I was doing the dark here, I would be doing the opposite. I would be pressing it towards the other way. This just kind of hides it just a little bit so it's not seen. There are going to be seams that's going to be seen, particularly on the quarter square triangle with the white. So you kind of like can't avoid that. And giving a little bit of a finger press here. Push in the seam, like sewing, pressing towards the fabric here, towards the panel, and tuck in that seam underneath. All right. Now we're going to go back to the cutting station and we're going to trim off these two edges on both sides, and then we're going to go ahead and get our top and bottom sewed on. How many people we got out there, Miss Cindy?
Yeah, as I say.
Oh,
Yeah,
glad you all could join us. Be sure to like and comment and share.
Yeah.
How's the weather where everybody is? Because it's been chilly here. Actually, it got a little bit nicer today. So I'm just using one of our little rulers. And what I am doing is I'm going to grab my glasses because I can't see. I walked away without them. Goodness. And I'm just taking my ruler and I'm lining it up against the edge of my panel here, the very top edge, and just kind of following that line. This is what little section I'm going to tear off. I think I'm going to cut that off instead of tear it. What do you think?
Might work better.
That would be better, right? Oh, goodness. We're going to trim that there. Go ahead and pull this one to me and do the exact same thing, following the straight edge of my panel here. Lining everything up and going ahead and trim that little section off right there. And you're going to do that on both sides. I don't know if I said, but be sure to like and comment and share. Let's get a bunch of people seeing this one. This one is such a great project for lots of different panels out there. If you're like me, you collected your panels. You need a great, easy one to do. Okay, 2 more to go, and then we'll be done with the first border, and then we'll start making our quarter square triangle blocks, our ribbon blocks. And just like I did the 2 sides, I just kind of line it past my selvage. And then I just trim it at the very end. And 1 more to go. right, let's go ahead and press this back, and then we will trim it, and then we'll be setting the panel aside. I'm going to turn it this way because I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to press it towards the panel, so I want my seam to kind of go under. I'm going to give it a little bit of a finger press. And then one more. Any questions? How are we doing?
No questions yet.
I think everybody's
Yeah,
Just watching.
enjoying.
All right. The purpose of this border is actually, it helps make the ribbon pop a little bit. You can't just put the ribbon on without having this border. If I didn't have it here, it wouldn't look like this ribbon is floating. It would look like it's more coming out of the panel. So that's why I put this border here and why there's another border on the outside, because it makes this panel float, or this ribbon look like it's floating a little bit better. I did try it without this, and it just didn't look right, and without this, it still didn't work. So having this centered where it looks like it's framing it in a little bit better was the purpose. If somebody had any questions of why we were doing a border first, it frames in the panel, and it helps that ribbon look like it's floating a little bit better. All right, so now we're going to go back to the cutting station. We're going to trim these two pieces off on the top and on the bottom. Then we're going to set this aside. We're going to take a 10-minute break, and in that 10-minute break, go ahead and get your white, your orange, and your yellow fabric together, because now we're going to do our cutting to make the ribbon borders. This piece right here, we're going to cut these pieces, and we're also going to go ahead and get our fabric cut to make the half square triangles that go in each of the corners. And I'm going to take this down because under here I've got another one that I've been working on that's a little bit further along, so I can kind of keep everything going with you. So we're going to get this trimmed, then we're going to take a 10-minute break, and I want everybody to be sure to get their fabrics ready because that's where we're going to start next. All right, so same procedure as what we had just done. Just lining up my ruler, following the edge of my border, straight edge here. And actually have it on one of my lines on my mat, and we're just trimming this off. These little pieces. And you got a little longer pieces here, so I would save those for another project. On the lines on my mat and the lines that's on the border, and just trimming that off. Once we get this trimmed, your border should now, your whole panel will measure 27.5 by 39.5. And the last one. All right. Hi everyone, welcome back, and I hope you're all caught up with me. So now we're going to start our next step. We're going to be making our half square triangles. We need to make 4 of them. These are for the 4 corners. And then we're going to be making all of our quarter square blocks for our ribbons. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to get your fabrics out, because you've got to cut your 4-inch squares out because I need those, because then once those are out of the way, then you're going to be cutting your fabric for the rest of your strips sets that you're going to be needing to be cutting out the pieces for your quarter square triangles. These are the quarter square triangles that we're going to be making. We have some that I call the left side, and these are called the right side. You have to make 26 of these, 18 of these. The 26 is for both sides. You're going to have on each side 13 and then 13. And then on the 18, you'll have 9 on the top and 9 on the bottom. They have to be done this way so that that ribbon looks like it's wrapping around and going off, and then it turns again and it comes back to this one. But you also have to have half square triangles. You're going to need 2 orange and 2 yellow. However, when you make one half square triangle, you'll have your 2 oranges and your 2 yellow. So this is what we're going to be making. We're going to be cutting our strips, and then we'll be using these templates to cut our sub-cutting so that we can make these. You can see that this one is used for all the yellow, and it's going to be for every yellow for all the pieces that we make. This is going to be used for all of our oranges and all of our whites, and it's just a matter of way you turn them to get your 26 and sew them to get your 26 and your 18. So that's how these are going to be done. So the first thing, so you're going to grab these templates. That's what you're going to be needing. You're going to be needing these 2, your large and your small triangles. You're going to need your 3.5-inch block, and you're going to need your 3, your smaller of your half square triangles. So the first thing I'm going to have you do is with your white fabric, and I don't care where you do it, find an end, just set it on one of your lines. I need for you to cut off 2 4-inch strips. So if you take your 3, I mean, you could take this one that's the half square triangle and you could set it on here and you could cut out 2. You need to have 2 of these, but they're basically about 4 inches. They're actually 3 7/8. So if you cut to the 4 inches, so I've just got this just pulled aside, and this little strip that I have is about 9 inches. So I'm just going to go ahead and just cut 4 inches off of my white because I have to have 2 pieces. So I've moved it past my selvage area to my 0 line, and I'm going to my 4, and I'm just freehanding it because that's not as important, because this block right here, this template, is going to square all of that up. It just needs to be a little bit bigger than the template. And I have to have 2 pieces of white. I need 2 white. So once I have those 2, I'm going to set that aside. And I'm going to set my white aside. I'm going to go ahead and grab my orange and my yellow, because I have to have 1 orange and 1 yellow. So I kind of open up my fabric here, get it beyond. I can grab my little piece of white square that I had just cut, because I'm just needing it to be about the same size. I need only 1 yellow. Just go ahead and get that knocked out. And then do the same thing with the orange. Cut out a 4-inch square of one of the oranges. So same thing, I'm just going to lay my little white on here and just cut it out. You're going to have plenty of fabric here to do the whole thing. And then just set those aside. So you have 1 orange, 1 yellow, and 2 whites. We'll be making our half square triangles in a minute. So we're going to go ahead and start with our orange fabric, since I have that one up here. And we're going to cut our strips. Just go ahead and line everything back up. Now, out of the orange fabric, I only need 2 strips that are 3.5 inches wide. 2 strips, 3.5 inches wide by width of fabric. So I do have a 3.5 inch ruler. That's why I said you do have plenty left over, but I want to go ahead and just go ahead and get that on here. I'm going to flip this over so I can get it on the right side for me to cut because I am right-handed. And I'm going to cut on the opposite side of where my cut is, just so I can have a full strip. So you got to cut 2 strips, 3.5 inches by width of fabric. I'm going to go ahead and trim it on the other side. There's one strip. And then we'll kind of cut one more. These will make all of our orange units. And that's all the orange that you're going to need. So now I have these. I'm going to go ahead and set these aside. Since we are still cutting 3.5 inch strips, we're going to go ahead and grab our white. Because you're also going to need to cut 2 strips of the white 3.5 inches. And get your second cut. So here's your 2 3.5 inch strips of the white. And now we're going to get our yellow, because we do have to cut more strips of the yellow. These are cut 3 inches. So I have a 3-inch ruler. And I have to cut out 4 strips that are 3 inches by width of fabric. I'm just going to cut out 2 of them here. But you will need 4 strips of the yellow, because you're cutting out quite a few of those, because the yellow is used on both of the strips. I'm just going to set these aside. So these are my 2, these are my yellows. So here's my white strips. And you can keep them stacked up. I go ahead and just keep them stacked up. I'm going to go ahead and get my edges all lined up, because I'll be not cutting on that selvage. I want them all to be lined up on the edge. And I'm stacking them up. Now this is, you don't have to. You can go ahead and just cut the strips at a time. And now you're going to go ahead and you're going to get the quarter square block. And it is the, I'm trying to figure out which one it is, the smaller one. So it's the smaller of the 2 of these right here, the smaller one. Now if you'll notice on here, I've got these arrows on here that says straight of grain. I'm doing this project so that my straight of grain is on the inside, and I've got bias The straight grain is on the inside here and here, and I have bias on my outside edges. Now there's a reason why I did that. I did that because I wanted it to have a little bit of a stretch to fit onto your panel. However, you don't have to do it that way. If you wanted to have your straight again on the outside, you can just do the opposite of what's listed on here, but your strips will have to be cut appropriately. Because if I have this sitting here, I'm wasting a lot of fabric if I wanted it to be this way. So that would be the smaller strips, like this. So we're going to be cutting these like this, and there's enough fabric on here where you'd be able to cut all the way around. So I did design this one so that I have the bias on the outside, gives it a little bit of stretch to fit properly onto your panel. That's if you find yourself that maybe you trimmed your panel a little bit too much, or maybe you didn't get your seam allowance quite right, you took in more seam allowance. It just seemed to work for this project here. But not to say that you can do yours where you have the straight grain on the outside. It also helped in putting in these pieces when you're sewing them together. You're not having any stretch when you're sewing them all together. So that's just a simple explanation of how I did it. So I've got my pieces here, and this is my smaller of the triangles, and I'm just lining it up here on the edge, and there's enough space here where I can trim all the way around, and I can cut out. I'm going to just trim up the 4 at a time, and I'm just going to cut here, and then I'm going to flip it back and forth this way, this way. I'm going to do this for all the way across to get every single white one that I need. I'm just going to cut till the strip is done, and then I'm going to repeat that with the orange, because the orange and the white is the exact same size. So we're just going to go ahead and get these all cut out. So I'm just laying my edge on the edge, and I can even bring it up just a little bit if I want to just go ahead and trim off that edge here. So it's the same on all 3 sides. Laying it here, grabbing my rotary cutter, doing my first cut, and with that get a grip, I can rotate this, cut, cut. There's my waist, and here's my first 4 all cut and ready to go. So then I take my template and I'm just rotating it. I'm actually lining it up right here on this edge. And I'm going to do my next cut. And I'm going to continue doing this all the way down. You're going to need a total of 44 of these pieces. So you're going to need at least 11 of these cuts if you're doing 4 at a time. And just stacking them up. This will be my 6. And you see all that? Any questions on this part? How's everybody doing out there? What do you think, Cindy?
They're quiet today. But there's no questions. I think they're just...
And with this white, to me, there's no right or wrong side. So it doesn't matter when I go to sew them together. I'm just pulling the next one over. I'm not even trying to figure out what is the right or the wrong side on this white. I noticed that with this one here. Some fabrics you can tell what the right and the wrong side is. This one I really can't. So you're just going to continue going all the way across. You have to have 44 of these. You'll have a few more extra as you're going all the way across. So once you have them all cut out, then you're going to grab your orange fabrics and you're going to do the exact same thing with the exact same template. So I'm just lining up all of my selvage ends on the end because I'm going to be cutting those off.
They're putting on there, they're cutting and following along with you. They're watching intensely, so we've got their attention today.
This is just, I just love, this
fun.
is such a great project. And if I haven't said it once, I'm going to say it again. It just looks so pretty around a panel. And like I said before, I've collected so many panels over the years because I just get oohs and ahs over panels. And I've got so many. And this is going to be one of those projects that's going to help me start digging through those panels and creating, you know, this beautiful ribbon border. I'm also going to start working on next designing a double ribbon. I think that's going to be my next one to work on, is do it in a double ribbon border.
You have a fan out here, Miss Lisa. Amy
What?
said she could watch you do this 400 times.
Well, you've probably watched it twice already.
All right, Amy, you're in trouble, girl.
Oh, thank you, Amy. Speaking of which, I love my quilt. If I haven't told you once, I've told you 1,000 times. I love that. It went with me to Oklahoma. I snuggle in it every night. It's just been the best thing ever. Thank you so much for my beautiful purple quilt. I'm surprised Cindy didn't try to steal it from me.
Well, I know where you live.
Oh, she says she knows where I live.
I can find you.
I guess she can find me.
I can hunt you down
I've
for
lived
purple,
there for
girl.
20 years. Yeah, you'd be able to find me. Oh, my goodness. Oh, and I think my daughter Cindy said she was going to watch today. So,
Oh, cool.
Hi, Cindy. Her name is Cindy, too. You know, I love that name.
Yes, apparently you
You know
do.
what Cynthia means, right?
No, I'm afraid to
Means-
ask you.
You don't know?
No, I.
It means moon goddess.
Oh, mercy.
You is a goddess.
You got that right. Or a drama queen, I'm not sure which.
Well, let me tell you, Cindy was born, my daughter Cindy was born on a full moon.
Oh, my.
So we named her Cynthia because it actually means moon goddess. So I just love the name. So a little Greek mythology there or something like that. I don't know. We found the name. But also, it was a really good friend that Curtis and I went to Bible college, and we really loved her name. Her name was Cynthia. I can't remember her last name. But I just fell in love with that name then. Yeah.
Well, Amy said that those aren't in the know. She made your quilt last retreat in July, so what's your excuse for me, Amy? I love purple. We'll see what I get, right? Probably a little square.
So that's the next ribbon block I'm going to be looking at designing or figuring out the templates for. Is going to be that double ribbon to kind of look like it's kind of like a double flowing around a block. I think that would be another twist to it. So, all right, so I'm just going to keep doing these because you have to have, again, 44 of these orange ones, just like you have to have 44 of the white ones. So you just keep cutting and cutting and cutting until you've gone all the way across and get all of your pieces done. So I'm going to set those aside. All right, now we're going to go to the yellow. Yellow's done with the other template. So I've got my orange ones and I've got my white ones stacked up right there. So the yellow one, this one is done with the larger of the, I don't even know if this is the right, I didn't think that was the right one. Here it is. Here's my fabric. So that's the skinnier of the fabrics here, but it is the larger template that you're actually using. So I'm going to knock this little section off right here. Fold these in half. All right, so it's the larger template, but here, if you'll notice, the straighter grain is here. So instead of having it sit onto the fabric like we did with the orange, it's actually that long edge is what's going to be sitting on the edge. So that's why we actually had to we got a skinnier strip, but you had to have, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, 4 strips of this yellow to do this one, because it is a bigger piece. you have to have 4 strips cut 3 inches wide. So you have to have 44 of these also. So I just start on one edge. And just like I did the other, I just kind of go back and forth as I do my cutting. Get my first cut. I got to change out that blade. Rotate it around, get my second cut. Again, these are cut just a little bit bigger, so you can trim them up on all 3 sides. Once I have my first cut, then I can just lay that straight edge here, right here. I'm going to cut here and here, just to square it all up. Just be careful with these smaller templates. Keep your fingers out of the way. I'm telling you that for a reason.
She might speak from experience.
Have you ever tripped off the end of your finger? Yeah, that's not fun. It's very easy to do if you don't have your fingers out of the way. And it's the second time I've took off a tip of this one. All right, you're just going to continue doing that all the way across until you have all of your pretty much fabric all cut up. You're going to need to have at least 44 of the yellow. Every now and then you might have to re-square everything up just to get all of your pieces cut. So I hope everybody has all that. Understand where we are with all of that. Okay. Now's the fun part. We're going to make our half square triangles first. So we're going to go ahead and get that set, because the next thing we're going to be doing is sewing, sewing, sewing. So grabbing your 2 whites and your 2 yellows, you have right here. Go ahead and place them right sides together with your white on top. Right side up, place the white on top. And you're going to grab this template right here. This is your half square triangle, because we're going to make 2 half square triangles of the orange. And we're going to make 2 of the white and yellow. So you're going to set your template on here. This is where you're going to need a marking pencil. And if you haven't used our half square triangles, you're going to draw your line here to here on the inside. Do not lift it up. Can y'all see that? Drawing my line. Drawing my line. All right, got your lines drawn, just kind of going over that. Do not lift it up. Once your lines are drawn, then you're going to take your rotary cutter and you're going to cut all the way around. And I am going to set this one back here because I do not want to pick that one up again. It's got a little nick in the blade. Cut, cut, and cut. Once you have that one done, set it aside. Grab your second one. Same thing. Take your template on there. Get your marking pencil or tool. Draw your line. Rotate around. Draw your line. And then, before you even pick it up, cut all the way around. So these are ready to go. We're going to sew those up in a minute. Now we're going to go work on everything else, which we're going to start working on getting our sewing. So you got to have 26 of what I call the left block and 18 of the right block. So for me, let me show you how that is. That's this one right here, 26. So when I look at this right here, or if I turn it where I've got my yellow that's out, when I say left and right, whereas the orange is on my left, the red is, or the orange on the other one is on my right. So I'm calling my oranges my left block, my right block. My left block I have to have 26 of. My right block I have to have 18 of. So why do I have it like this? It's because how I set this at my ironing station. I'm going to grab my orange pieces, and I'm going to grab my white pieces. I have them sitting at my ironing station like this. This here is to make the 26. So my orange is on the bottom because I'm going to grab my white piece. I'm going to have these like this. I'm going to have my orange one here, right side up, take my white piece, slide it under here, and there's where I'm stitching, right here. It's going into my machine like this. So my orange is on the bottom. I'm going to do that for 26 of these. So we're going to chain piece these all the way through. Now, when I need to start doing the 18, then I change it. Move the white over here, and now the orange is over here on this side. So now it's on my right side. And when I go to put these underneath my machine, I'm going to have my white on the bottom, grabbing my orange, and it's going to go on top here. And now I'm going to sew right here, and I'm going to sew 18 of these. So that's how it goes into my machine. I have these sitting beside me like this, so I'm just going to the next one, going to the next one. Now you can go ahead and count out 26 and 18, put 26 in a pile and 18 in a pile. You just got to remember that 26 goes like this, and then you flip it around, and then the 18 goes this way. So let's go to the machine. We'll go ahead and get started on these so that you can see. And be sure to grab your half square triangles and grab your yellows because the yellow goes on all of them. But we don't put the yellow on until we do some pressing. So I'm going to leave the yellow here because once we get these all chain pieced through, then we're going to take a minute, cut them apart, and then we're going to iron them. So we're going to start with our half square triangles. We're going to sew one side, and then we're going to sew the other side. We're going to do that on both of these. So I'm going to go ahead and put my needle back in the middle, and we're going to just sew on those lines, and we're going to do that on both these pieces. And I'm kind of going to like chain piece them. I'm just going to get this one through, grab the next one, and just go ahead and sew it through. And I just flip it around and sew these two down. And then sew this one. I'm not even going to cut them apart or separate them. I'll do that in a minute. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and start sewing these pieces. We've got to have 26 rights and 26 or 18 left. So 26 left. So I'm going to set, this is my left. I'm going to set these on my machine like this, and we're going to just chain piece these through. So just laying one here, having your machine set up on the 1/4 inch, grabbing the next one, and just start chain piecing. sewing this at 1/4 inch. Then you just grab your next one, making sure you turn it so you've got your right angle that's heading into the machine. Grab your white, lay it on top, so 26 with the white on top. Do we have any questions on this one?
No, ma'am.
All right. And you just keep doing these till you have all of them sewed in. What I like to do is when I have about 26 of them, then I go ahead and cut my thread because I'll keep that string all together. Then I'll separate it out, and then I'll go ahead and start sewing my 18 of the other. Just lining up my point here and here, and this line here, and just sewing it through. I'm not sure how many it is, but we're going to go just ahead and stop with that. So I've got these all done. So I've got 26 here. Go ahead and cut my thread, and I set them aside because now I'm going to go ahead and flip it over, and we're going to start working where I have the orange on my right side. So the orange will be on top when I feed these through, and I have to have 18 of these. So I've got these here. Lay my white one down first, orange on top, and then we sew 18 of these.
Lisa, we
Yep.
have a question from Verna. She wants to know if you're back tacking.
Nope, I am actually straight, no back tacking at all. This is chain piecing one right after another. We're going to clip all these apart, and then we're going to sew them again. Because at the next, it doesn't make a point to back tack these, because at the very end, once we fit, the next step is we're going to trim them all down to 3.5 inches. So it doesn't make sense to back tack because we're going to be trimming all of that off. So they answer that. So I just chain piece this one. It just goes through real quickly to get these done. So here I'm just, orange is now on top. And you need to do 18 of these. This last one here. Okay. So now we're going to cut all these apart, and then we're going to press all these open. So here's my 2 different strings. So I just cut them apart and just stack them up. These seams on all of these actually get pressed open. It just makes it a little bit easier when we go to sew the next, sew the yellow triangle on. So I try to keep these separated in their little piles. So we're going to get your iron hot, because the next step is going to be ironing all these seams open, and then we're going to iron back our half square triangles too. All right, so here's my 2 piles of these. Go ahead and cut your half square triangles apart, and with your little ruler, which I don't know what I did with my little ruler, you're going to cut in between these. You can cut it with some scissors, or you can just cut your rotary cutter down the middle. This is going to give you 2 half square triangles of your orange and white, and 2 half square triangles of your yellow and white. So let's go to the iron, and we're going to go start getting all of these pressed. Now for your half square triangles, they're going to go in these corners here and here and here. We are going to set your seam and then just roll it back on the dark side. And do that to all 4 of them. And the only thing you need to do is just clip off your little dog ears, and these should be ready to go. So I'm just going to set those aside. Now all of these pieces, and I need my seam press, here it is. I use the seam press for this, it kind of keeps it flat. So you're going to take these and you're going to open them all up. Now we do have a seam assist for that, but they're so small that I just find it just easier if I just use my fingers just to open them up, and then I use my seam press to hold everything down, and it sets it, absorbs that heat, and makes it just lay nice and flat. So I open up every single one of these. On your left and on your rights. And just keeping them in their little piles as you go. How are we doing out there, Cindy?
Good. I think they're concentrating on getting their rights and their lefts.
I got that section. Now we're going to do the next one. I find it's easier if I have the flat edge to me to start my pressing and then going up to the point. It just seems to work a little bit better than if I was to start from the point and work toward the flat edge. The next step is where we're going to be sewing all of our yellow triangles onto this piece here. So there's a little bit of trick to that. Then we press those and then we trim them down. That's just the one point that's a little bit time consuming, is trimming down all of these pieces. But once we get them trimmed down, they'll fit perfectly onto our panel. So I'm going to continue getting all these done. And we're going to probably move on to the next step because we got a little bit more work to do, but got to get through the day. All right, I'm going to just leave those there. All right, so now we're going to come back to the sewing machine, and we got our pieces here. So now you're going to grab your yellow triangles that you had cut out, and we're just going to chain piece all of these through it, but there is a little trick on doing the lining up of it. You know, I'm going to come over here so we can get a close-up so you can see where we're going. This is kind of important. So here's the triangles that we just did, that we have our oranges to the left, the 26 left, the 18 right. So we got them here. And now we got to sew these pieces on. So you're going to have this where, what I have found is easiest, because you're going to be trimming all of this down anyway. But I kind of like get it lined up on my edge, and I'm trying to get my point, this point right here, this point, as close to being into the seam point right here. So I'm lining it into here and lining up my edges. I'm not worried if it's off a little bit here and here, because this is going to be a little, there's going to be a little bit of trimming here. But get it as close as you can, and you're going to just chain piece all of these through. I can find it's easier if I just go ahead and line it up there at the point and then line it up at my edges, and then just sew, sew, sew. Does that make sense? Does everybody got that? It's easy if I get as close to that point to be right there on the seam right here. This point on that seam. And then it automatically lines up in those edges. So you're going to do that to all of these. Then we'll press them back. And then we're going to trim them. And then we're going to start arranging them onto the panel.
Lisa, we have some beginners that are watching and said you're doing an excellent job.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
I would hope I have this one down pat now. How many times have I taught this class? Oh, goodness. All right, so getting this under the machine. Thank you so much for the kind remarks. So getting this under the machine, this is also 1/4 of an inch. So I just kind of pull it up a little bit to where my needle's touching it. And it's right there on the edge, dropping my needle down and just sewing across. Holding it down, let the machine do the work. This is where one of those reasons why I do not have the bias on this inner side, because there is no bias here. It's pretty tight. It's all the straight of grain is on the inside here. The bias is all on the outside. So it helped for me in the accuracy of this block. Easier to sew. You just have more that you just have the bias on the outside. So you're just all straight of grain sewing here, so you don't have any really stretching or pulling. Everything just glides right through. And just like we did with the sewing the orange and the whites, I'm just chain piecing every one of these through.
Lisa, we have a question. Someone wanted to know, couldn't you just nest the seams?
There is no nesting seam here. What
Okay.
seam am I nesting?
I don't know. But
I
that,
don't think she realizes there's no seam on that yellow piece that you're attaching.
Yeah, there's no seam on the yellow. It's a single piece. Let's see, I'm trying. You will have some nesting of the seams. Trying to think where
but
you
not on
see
this
that.
particular,
Yeah, not on the ribbon. I think you
Not
actually
on the
have a
ribbon,
little
yeah.
bit of nesting seam on the when we start working on the hourglass blocks. But there's no nesting seam. And you see that one was off by a little bit, but it should be fine when I go to when I trim it all down, it should all work. Get a couple of these sewn here. How we doing out there? Is everybody sewing along with me?
yes, they are.
All right, we're gonna get a couple
They
more of
wanna,
these done.
some of them want to rewatch it tonight. It'll be up on it. Yes,
There
okay.
you go.
So y'all can rewatch it tonight.
Again, this is a great project for just chain piecing along, just zipping them through. Pops your headphones in, listen to some good music, and just chain piece these through. All right, we're going to stop right there. We're going to take all these to the ironing station. We're going to clip these apart, and we're going to go ahead and press these, and then we're going to trim them down. All right, so just clipping them here. Keeping them in the same grouping, left and rights. All right, that's it. Okay. So these are all pressed. I have the yellow on top. I believe that's how okay, so yeah, you're gonna flip them over. And I found it's easier to just press these by putting the yellow on top, and you're going to roll it back this way. And just like I did the others, I just kind of first do a I set that seam, grab my yellow fabric, and I just roll it back. And then I'm going to set my seam press over top of that. Just going to set that seam and make it lay nice and flat. So I'm going to set the seam and roll it back. Oh, that one didn't get hit right. I'll redo that one. Didn't roll it back properly. Had too much of a crease right here. I'm going to reset that. There we go. You're going to do that to all of your blocks. Flip these over. Again, you're only making 44 blocks for this outer piece, plus you have your 4 half square triangles, which you've already cut those and pressed those. That's your corner, that's your quarter settings. Once we get this first border all the way around, then the only thing left is to put another border of the white. And then we're going to start making the hourglass, that's a really fun block because it's all made with half square triangles. Okay, so these are all set. So now we're going to go back to the cutting station. We're going to grab our 3.5 inch square, and we're going to square them up to 3.5 inches all the way around. Alrighty. So here's how I do this. I've got my 3.5 inch template here. And what I am doing is I'm taking the point, I'm having it away from me, and I'm grabbing it, I'm looking at lining this point and this point. See if I can grab my little pointer that I had. So these 2 points, this one and this one, I'm going to have on this seam, and this point right here, I'm going to have lining up right in here. So I kind of just set it down here. I kind of drop it on. I'm looking at lining up my center here and then dropping it down. So I got this point on this seam right here and this point on this seam right here and this one into this seam right here. I'm trying to get the 3 points into this seam, and then you're going to see what little bit we're going to be trimming off all the way around. And it'll be a perfect little 3.5 inch block. And just be sure to have your fingers out of the way and do all of your trimming. Just little slivers that we'll be cutting off. And now I've got my perfect 3.5 inch block. And you're going to do that with all of them and then just stack them up into their appropriate pile, whether you're looking at for your left or your rights. See that? So I'm going to bring this around again. Here's my untrimmed block. Grabbing my template, dropping it on here, putting my points at the seams, at all 3 of those seams. Not really looking at what's going on at the very back, just focusing on the 3 seams, lining these into the seams. You might be trimming off more off of one side than the other. Like this one right here. I'm going to be trimming off more on this side than I am on this side, but I have this locked into all 3 of the seams. Here's my little slivers, and here's my block. You see that? Again, I put my seam up on top. I just found this was the easiest for me to see what I was doing. Now, if you have one of those lock block tools, you could use it. I just like using my Martelli template. I don't have to flip it around to recenter it. I just have it on here, lining up my points into the seams, and then I just flip it all the way around. I don't have to lift it up. Any questions on this one?
We have a question about what is the seam press block made out of?
The seam press?
The
The seam press.
Yes, ma'am.
It's a Martelli tool.
I know. They want to know what it's made out of.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I'm going to grab it because it's absolutely one of my favorite tools. I can't remember what project I was making, but I was making a ton of projects, and Linda Winter kind of helped me on coming up with this tool. I had her husband, Philip, had made me a tailor's press, and I should have brought it. I always talk about it. It's a big thing. I love it. It's got all these different components to it for ironing curves, for pressing. I mean, it's a multi-purpose tool. But I wanted something smaller just to press my seams. I was making the dancing diamond. That's what it was. I was having to press a lot of seams in making the dancing diamond quilt. And I needed something that I could lay this on here that would set those seams and lay flat. Because if I was to press something and walk away from it a little while later, a lot of times it wouldn't just be laying flat anymore. So me and Linda went to Valerie with an idea. And it's made out of the HDPE, which I think is like the same material that we make our long arms out of. I think if you kind of look at this, our long arm machines are all made out of this material. And then we got the ever popular browning fabric that's underneath. So it reflects heat, it kind of absorbs it, reflects it. I don't know exactly what it does, but I know when I set this on here, set this onto that seam, my seams lay flatter and more crisp. I had done a little bit of experience where I'd pressed one and didn't use the seam press, and then pressed one and did use it and left it alone for like 4 days. And then it came back, and the one that I had actually used the seam press was still just as flat and crisp as the one that, I had pressed it but didn't use the seam press. So I don't know, in Florida we have a lot of humidity, and this just seems to be a great tool to work with. So I hope that answered that question. It's just one of those tools I just absolutely adore using. It's not heavy. We got the ergonomic little ball one here, so it's not that heavy, but it just adds just enough weight, and this feature right here really helps. All right, so how was that? Did I answer that? I hope I did.
I think so.
Okay, so we're going to go back. So I'm going to keep on pressing getting all these trimmed down. So it's just going to take me a minute lining up all of my points and trimming all the way around. And put it in the right pile. That's important to make sure I get it in the right pile.
That's a great idea, Lisa, of how you've got that lined up. It looks like it makes it so smooth.
What
the way you're lining up this, and
yeah, it works better, and I actually have one of those lock block templates, but I find myself grabbing my Martelli template it's so much easier. I'm not
It's so
having
much
to
easier, yes.
flip it around and do it again and flip it around and do it again. It just, once I have it locked into the position that I want it to be in, it's going to be, I'm just easily to trim all the way around. It's so much faster to do. So I'm just flipping it around, getting it into my seam, seam, and seam on all three. And I got it set, and then I quickly just trim all the way around. And every single one is coming out right on the money, perfect. If you can see, perfect, perfect, perfect. By just setting it on those seams. And everybody loves a perfect block. When you have a perfect block, they just go together so much better. Right, Margot?
Right.
Well, you know, the other neat thing too is, y'all, is that you're cutting off those little dog ears.
Yep.
You don't have to do those individually. It's what a great
Yep, you're
idea.
getting 1, 2, 3, 4 dog ears off at the same time.
Yeah, with what, a rotating flip, and you're done.
Yep. Awesome, awesome. Again, another
Wow.
came out just perfect. Just put it in the right pile.
Get your left and your right straight, lady.
Yep. All right, last couple more. Okay, I think I've got quite a few done. I don't know if I have them all done, but I have quite a few. So this is my 18, pile of 18. I actually have done some prep work, so I got some of these done. So I'm going to put these over here. These have not been trimmed up yet. And then here's my other pile. And these are all trimmed up here. I think I'm going to need these 3. So let me get these trimmed up too, and then then we're going to start working on our layout and sewing these pieces together for our tops and our sides, and which adds the half square triangles that you made just a little while earlier. One, two, flip it around. It's always easier if you have these up on top. All right, we're going to call that good right there. Grab all of our little scrappy doos. All right, now we're going to go over to the ironing station where I actually have the one I've been started on. And I'm going to show you how to lay these blocks out so they go around and shows that wrapping of the ribbon on here. So you're going to grab your pieces, your lefts, your rights, and you're going to grab your 4 half square triangles that you had just made. You're going to grab all 4 of those. Now you might want to go ahead and trim off the dog ears off of your half square triangles if you haven't done so already, because these are 3.5 inches. They should be exactly 3.5 inches. If I just set here on my mat, yep, it's exactly 3.5 inches. I don't have to run these underneath the 3.5 inch square because it is the 3.5 inch half square triangle template already. So they come out right on the money when you use this template and you sew right there on the lines. Okay, so I got the dog ears off of those. So grab those, grab your blocks, and we're going to go over to our panel. So this one I've got it pre-started. But I'm going to show you, if I wouldn't have had it pre-started, you would have had just this blank slate like this. So I'm just going to cover this. Oh, that broke that pen. You know what, I'm just going to take this one off. Move it over. So here's our blank slate, one that doesn't have anything sewed on it yet. You're going to have 13 of the 26. You're going to have 13 on one side and 13 on the other. So they're the ones that have the, let's see, I think it's the orange. It's orange on left. So orange on the left, the left blocks. That's going to be the ones, the 26, that's going to be the ones that's on your left on both sides. So to start it off, you're going to sew a strip set, and you're going to put a strip set on each side. So the strip set is 13. So they're going to start with the white at the top, white coming in on the inside, orange on top. Then you're going to flip it where you're going to have the yellow touching, white is now left, orange on the bottom. So it's going to be, think I got that right? Yep. So then you're going to have it turned again. So white is now touching, white is away. The white is touching, the white is away. Or you've got your looking of the ribbon going. And I dropped one. So you've got to have 13 on here. Now it's going to go longer than what your panel is. Don't worry about that, because when you sew these together, it's going to pull it all in so that it will fit onto here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I don't think I have enough made. 9. White away, 10. And then 11, 12, and 13. I think I don't have enough all of them. Let me see if I could show you. So you're going to have 13 here, and then you're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. You're going to start with your white on the top, white on the out, white on the top, until you have all 13. Then you're going to sew them together. So you're going to sew the two side pieces first. So we're going to go ahead and see, this one's on this way. It's the exact same thing, it's just the opposite. We're going to go ahead and finish these strip sets, and then we're going to sew it on. So you're going to just sew these on, chain piece it, just sew, just sew it, all those together. So I'm going to show you how I do that. And put all these together. I'm going to show you how I do my chain piecing to get the two side pieces done. And when we get done, we're going to have the strip set done, all 13 pieces, and it will look just like this. You'll stitch it on, it'll fit perfectly onto this panel just like that. So let's go ahead and get these sewed together. And this is where you're just working with the 26, not the 18. The 18, set those aside, and your half square triangles, because you don't need those yet. And that's the half square triangle. So I do a little bit of a chain piecing on this section here too. But you could just go ahead and just do one right after the other. I mean, it's up to you on how you want to do it. But I found that if I just chain piece them, like this one here is going to be sewed here. So then this one's going to be here. So I like to try to sew them in twos, and a lot of times I can get these seams right here to nest a little bit. Doesn't always, but a lot of times they do nest. And then I'm matching up this 2 points right here. There is no nesting right here because those were the seams that were pressed open. So you're just sewing your strip set together of the 13 on for do the one side, sew it on, and then go ahead and do the other side. Starting off with the white on the going in towards the center. Let's see, I'm get that right. I have the orange here, and so I'm basically look like I'm just sewing the oranges together. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then it's an odd number, so you're going to be sewing one extra one on the bottom. So then once you sew your twos together, then you're going to sew your fours together, and then you're going to sew them all together till you get your 13 pieces. And then I'm going to sew these together. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then one more on the bottom, make my 13. It should be your very last one. Okay, I got my thread wrapped around. There we go. And since you just squared all these up to 3.5 inches, they should all fit together just perfectly. And as you sew them, you're going to see you're going to have this little bit of extra right here that's kind of makes it look like it's a crooked line, but that is your seam allowance. So when you go sew that in, it's just going to just all smooth out right there. All right, so then once you get your strip set sewn, then you're going to iron it, and I like to iron it into a single direction. So I like to iron it so that when I'm sewing down, I'm not fighting that seam, so the seam is laying down. So I'm going to go ahead and iron this piece. And I'm looking at, so right now I'm working on sewing the other side on. So knowing that it sits right here, and it's going to fit right there, and I'm going to be sewing it on, I'm probably going to start at the bottom here, so I want my seams to go this way. So I find it was easier to start on the back side and kind of give it a little push, and then I'll flip it over and smooth out, make sure I didn't leave any creases, just kind of lifting and pushing that seam over, because there's a lot going on right here. So I'm just kind of rolling that seam over just a little bit. Setting it into the direction that I want it to go. Then I flip it back over, roll it down, making sure that those seams are still going in the direction I want them to go. And then I press it from the top side, make sure I didn't leave any creases in that. Not letting it win, wanting it to go the way I want it to go. Whoever fighting the fabric, right? Ever fight the fabric? How about you, Cindy? Have you ever fought the fabric?
Yes, ma'am.
Always wants to go the way it wants to go. So your little ribbon should look like this, like little orange squares in the little yellow lines. So then you're just going to take the side where the white is going to be coming in on the top. And that's where this is going to be sewed in right here. And it should match up perfectly from top to bottom. Now if you want, you could pin this in, you could find your center, kind of pin it and clip it, and then just sew it on. I went ahead and just sewed it onto here. Now this one, because I have so much going on right here, when I did go to press this, I pressed it towards the border because it just wouldn't work to push it back out. So this is one of those instances where you will be seeing that your border or your seam allowance through the fabric here. So I'm going to go ahead and get this one sewed on, and then we're going to go over how to do the top and the bottom because we're actually using the half square triangles to do that section. So I'm going to lay this over here, here, and I'm sewing from the bottom to the top on this one. Any questions so far?
They want to know, what is the iron that you're using? Isn't that one of those Olissa irons?
Yeah, that's an Olisso.
Olisso.
It is actually a Quilter's Edition iron. What I love about it is you don't have to have that little feature where it's standing up. For me, the best feature about that iron is that it has a 30-minute shut-off time. Most irons that we have out there are 8 to 10 minutes. This one has a 30-minute shut-off time. So it goes a little bit longer. Plus, it still has all the safety features and everything. Like if you used to tip it over, it would, and you didn't have the little feet working on it, because you can shut that feature off. But another feature that it has a 12-foot or 15-foot cord. So that's unheard of. So it gives you a super long cord so that you can work around your big quilts, but it's that shut-off feature, because, you know, a lot of times we get to sewing something takes a little bit longer, and you don't have to wait for your iron to reheat up. And it does heat up quite quickly. All right, so I'm just sewing this on. I'm looking for, I'm sewing it at a 1/4 inch, and it should come out perfectly anyway, because we did trim these up to the perfect 3.5 inches. But what I'm looking to do is, as I'm sewing along, I'm at that 1/4 inch so that it will come along and catch it right here at a 1/4 inch all the way down, so I don't lose any of my points. If I did it correctly, it should be where I don't lose any of my points as I'm sewing this down. Lining up the edges, let the machine pull it through. You could take the time to pin it in place, particularly if you're worried about things shifting a little bit. right, now we're just going to press this back. And I'm actually pressing this towards the border for this part right here, because there's a lot of seams here and it's going to want to go in that direction anyway. So I'm just pressing it back. And I'm going to repeat that on both sides. All right, then I'm just going to lay this right back. I'm going to take this one down. And I'm just going to lay this right back on here, because now we're going to go ahead and start our top and bottom. This one's done a little bit differently because we now have the half square triangle blocks to fit in to finish this look. All right, so we're getting to the home stretch of the first day. So you're going to take your other blocks, which is we just did the left block, so now we're going to be doing the right blocks. We did the wrong blocks before, now we're doing the right ones.
That
Lord.
won't confuse them out there, Miss Lisa. Did the right, yes,
Oh,
we did
good.
the right block.
So the orange on the right. So this
Oh,
is to me
mercy.
the orange was on the right, but if I'm facing it. So this one starts off with your half square triangles. So if you see this one here, the half square triangle is yellow. The square where we have the white coming in, it's yellow on this side. It's orange on this side. So it's going to be the yellow that's going to fit right here. Do you see how that's going to make that ribbon start wrapping around? Does that make sense? So now you grab those blocks that are opposite of these, and you're going to put that white starting in the middle here, but now your orange and your yellow is going to be here. See how it looks like that ribbon's now wrapping around that? Same thing, you have the white going in and out, but because this block is turned, whereas the orange was on the different side. So now it's what makes this ribbon work. So now you're just going to have your whites going inside and outside, and continue making these little orange squares in the middle. And you're going to work all the way across. So these are 9 blocks with the 2 hourglass. So you got 9, 10, 11 with the 2 half square triangles. So it's 11 blocks across, 9 of your half square triangles, quarter square triangles, and then 2 of your half square triangles. So it makes 11 blocks. So 1, 2, 3, 4. It's going to go beyond 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 7 and 8. Kind of ignore that for a minute, okay? Because we still have all these seam allowances that have to be taken up. 7, 8, and 9. So here's my 9. And it's orange on this side, so you're going to grab the orange and it's going to go here. So I know you can't see it, but let me take this now and move it to here. Now you see it, how the ribbon transposed over. So when you get all these seams sewed in, it's going to fit into here. And I think I actually have that already sewed together. So just like how you sewed those side pieces there, you're going to just chain piece and sew all these pieces together here. Imagine those all sewed together. Let's move this out. So here's my strip sewed. See it? That one fell down. I know when I first was laying it out, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's just too big. But the seam allowance takes it all in when you sew all these spots in, and it's just going to fit nice and smooth right here. So then you still have that little 1/4 inch that's right here. It's going to be taken up in that seam allowance, so it's going to just look just nice and pretty, just like it did on here on the sides. So we're going to sew this one on, and then we'll do the bottom one just like we did the top one. How we doing? Got about 15 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and leave that up here. I'm going to sew that on. But you got to sew your bottom one. Well, the bottom one is pretty much the same, except it's opposite. You've got the yellow over here, you got the yellow over here. So your yellow hourglass is what's going to be over there, and then you're going to be working it all the way across. So just pay attention to how your ribbon is going. So being that I've got the orange over here, I already have that one sewed, just like we did before, we're just going to, same thing, top and bottom, top and bottom, top and bottom, all the way across, and then it's the orange on the bottom. So let's go ahead and get this sewed on, and then we'll get the bottom one done. How are we doing out there?
Good.
Line it up. You could take the time and pin all this, but I'm just going to just sew it on. Again, just let your machine just feed it through. If you feel like you need to pin it, I'm just grabbing the end, making sure it lines up perfectly at the end, and just letting it slide through. I'm kind of wanting this to nest right here. This is that seam right there, and the final seam right here. All right, now we're going to get this ironed, and then we only have one more section to do. So I'm going to let it go back towards the panel like I did on the side pieces. That way it's not fighting those seams. All right, so that's that border, and the only border left is the bottom one. How's that looking? Yeah, it's pretty good. Pretty good so far. All right, so the next thing would be to get the bottom one done. But while we're doing that, we're going to take a break. We're going to not take a break, but we're going to talk about this piece right here. This is the one that we cut off earlier. So here's some more prep work for you to do for tomorrow. You go ahead and finish. Get all of your pieces all the way around, top and bottom. Get it all pressed and ready to go. Make sure you have your fabric all pressed for your purple and blue. If you want to go ahead and pre-cut for your next, don't even do that. We'll do it all tomorrow. I'm not even going to talk about pre-cutting for your next border, because the next border is another white border that goes around, and then we're going to start working on the hourglasses, which the hourglasses is all half square triangles. We make a whole bunch of one size, and then we make a whole bunch, flip it over and do the other side. So you'll see, it's really awesome. So in the meantime, here's that piece that we cut off at the very beginning. This is the one that had, this depended on the panel that you had got. Some of them might have had 3, some of them might have had 4 butterflies, but this one I have right here has my 4 little butterflies. And I just hate just throwing it away. So what I had done was I wanted to give it a little bit of stability, and I wanted to give it a little bit of body. So I took some SF101, which is the shirt fuse, the heavy interfacing, and I first ironed it onto the back of this fabric right here. So I have that ironed on first. Matter of fact, I think I just have it ironed on. I don't know if I have it on. I think I just ironed it behind the butterfly. So I put a little square, a big square of SF101 that covered this whole section, and a little piece that covered this whole section. Then I got some heat and bond light, and I have that ironed right here and right here. So I have it ironed on both sides just to completely cover up these butterflies. Then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut, I'm going to rough cut around the butterflies. And I think I actually don't even cut out, because the antenna is so thin, I think I just go ahead and cut off the antenna. So I think I'm just going to rough cut the main focus of the butterflies here. Because when I stitch it down, I peel off the backing, and I'm going to lay them on there. I'm going to peel off the backing. We're going to do that tomorrow. So we're going to peel off the backing, then we'll stitch these down. And I actually take some black thread, and I think I just stitched it up. You can embroider the little thread just to kind of make some of these pieces that you're going to lose in cutting it off. But it was just an added feature. So if you have time tonight to go ahead and prep your fabric and get that ready to go, and then rough cut around your butterflies, because we're going to, once we get our last border on, we'll put those on and stitch them down, and it'll be all ready to go. And the only thing left to do would be to put your backing and batting on it and get it quilted, and then you'll be good. So I think that's about everything that we can get through for today. Does anybody have any questions out there? Anything going on?
I don't see any questions right now.
We still have a good group with us today?
We do.
Oh, fantastic.
So.
All right. So if you do have any questions after this broadcast and you want to reach out to us, you can always reach me at learn@martellinotions.com. Learn@martellinotions.com, and I'll get back with you. I do have that, comes to my phone. So looking forward to hearing any questions, comments, concerns that you might have. I hope you're enjoying this. Tomorrow we'll get it all finished up, so just be sure to have all of your fabrics prepped and ready to go, which is your purple and your blue and the rest of your white. Go ahead and get this all prepped up. We will be back here again tomorrow at 1:30 Central Standard Time here at the studio. Hope to see you then. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been a lot of fun. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.